Okay, so we're back with another Wrestler Ramble, and obviously following what happened on Dynamite with Kenny, and that just great moments. Still not over it. We're going to be talking about the other half of that match. We're going to be talking about a certain Maxwell Jacob Friedman, and not specifically rambling about him, but just rambling about, you know, just overall how great his reign has been this year for him. Has been absolutely excellent, and frankly, I feel like the big thing is what do we next with Max. Now, straight up, let's talk about the reign. I think the reign has been absolutely great. I think as soon, even when he gave it to Darby and then when he gave it to Darby and then picked it back up, ever since then, it was only like 40 days, but it still had that, a bit more meaning to it. Obviously, this moment with Kenny isn't as special without Max. Like, it has to be Max. It really elevates that point. Obviously, Max as himself is just I'm never going to speak bad about the guy. I think he's absolutely excellent. And everything about it is just, he deserves a lot more credit than he gets. And the problem is what you're going to get with Max now is you're going to get absolute idiots. And I've not seen any yet, but I know they exist. Is you're going to get like, oh, Max is being buried. Max is being fucking fucked over. All this. It's like, no, he hasn't. Like, so people still have got the hopes that Max is going to be in the main event at Wembley. I don't think that happens, but I think, it's definitely plausible. But for me, I just don't think they do that. I think you have to do Ospreay, Kenny 3-1v1. But, well, 4 technically, but you know what I mean. But with Max, if people try and say, like, oh, Max has been buried or Max has been shoved and he deserves it, it's like, well, don't get me wrong, Max has done absolutely great work, but Max doesn't benefit from having that main event at Wembley much as, like, he had the first one, the biggest one, he had the one at All In 23. You know what I mean? That was the biggest one, and he retained. You know what I mean? Normally a big match like that's a drop. But with like this, to say if he's been buried, to say he's been shoved aside, whatever, that's just stupid. Like they're the type of people who are going to be talking about like, oh, if you lose, you get buried. Like that's just stupid. Wrestling isn't all about the wins and losses, and frankly, losing to Kenny Omega in that fashion, in that way, there's no problem with that. How is there a problem with that? It's just, if I find anyone saying that, frankly, if you see anyone saying that from my perspective, they don't have a damn clue what they're on about. And I really mean that as brutally as it sounds. They don't have a clue. But with Max, obviously, the question is, what do you do after this now for All In and Redemption? Redemption's definitely more eager. You could definitely do something with him and Ospreay, even him and Kenny again. You could do triple threat there, realistically. I doubt you do, but you could. And I do think there's definitely options you can do with Max. I don't know what you do. For me, the All In match screams Andrade. I think that absolutely screams it, because for me, for Max, that's your big story that's being built up, obviously, throughout the year. Even just when Andrade joined, you had that whole little stuff with him and Andrade, that's where it stems from. And, it really reached the boiling point with the Forbidden Door match. And not that Max, the thing is with Max, right? Max is so talented, so good with everything, where you can give him anyone and it's going to work. Like, Max doesn't need the specific, big time view, because he just makes everyone just up the level. He's great. He really elevates his opponents. For me, I think the obvious, All In's your big blow-off show. That's your mania, so to speak. The call for me is Andrade. Easy, that's the call. But I do think, I wouldn't be surprised if they do something else. I just don't know what. I feel like you could definitely you could do multiple ways. Honestly, you don't need... Max is one of those people that doesn't need the belt. Same like Kenny. Kenny doesn't need a belt. Max doesn't need a belt. Max is that level in sense of, like, notoriety and stuff. And then I seen someone say before, actually, oh, Max, you're telling me Max wouldn't be the bigger draw at Wembley? It's like, well, Max will still be at Wembley. What do you want about? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is the thing with AEW's roster, right? AEW's roster is so unbelievably stacked. You've got guys like Jay White, you've got guys like Hangman Swerve, you've got guys like Darby Allin, Max, Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, Jon Moxley, and then this is not even including guys that have been like unbelievable this year, who haven't really had that, whole thing with like Tommaso Ciampa, and obviously, you've still got Kyle Fletcher, Okada, Takeshita, and that's just the men's side. The women's side too, obviously, is ridiculously good too. It's just, not everyone needs to be in that main event. The main event needs to have that extra oomph, and the story for it, and the story that's being revolved around, the main story of AEW is Will Ospreay with the Death Riders. If that has to be the main event, and frankly, stuff with Kenny has got more weight and has got more, things behind it than the Max match. And frankly, I've never understood this, why people wanted Kenny and Ospreay and Max again. We got that in 24. And, like, that was a great match. It was absolutely great. But, frankly, with Wembley's a big deal. All In's a big deal, you know what I mean? Like, frankly, why would you do the same match twice? Why would you do that there twice? Like, that's silly to me. Like, I just don't get that. Like, it's like doing Max and Adam Cole again. You know what I mean? Like, you got to shake it up. I love Ospreay. I love MJF. But I wouldn't want them to go at it again at Wembley. I'd love them to go at it again, but not at Wembley. I just don't think that's right. And I just feel like there's a lot of ways you can do it, Max. For me, again, the Andrade stuff's there. You could obviously even do Swerve. We haven't done that. You know, Hangman's still, you know, roaming about. We don't know when he's back. There's a bunch of people you could do. You could even do Jay White, realistically. There's so many people you could do with Max. Max doesn't need to have that big feud. And I get it. This is the thing. I do get it where people are coming from, where, frankly, they're going, oh, Max has done all this with the belt and he's not getting the main event. Well, realistically, like, it's the nature of the business. Two, he's already had that main event. Yeah, he's done excellent work, but frankly, he doesn't need it. Like, realistically, you got to look at it from a business sense of view. What is a bigger match? Is it Kenny versus Ospreay 3, where they're all 1-on-1 in Kenny's hometown and neutral ground at Japan? And, you know, the third being at Wembley and Ospreay for Ospreay to win the belt? Or Max and Ospreay 2 for 3, technically, at Wembley, again, just which they kind of did last year, but just for the main belt. Like, to me, that doesn't work. And you don't get the Kenny moment without that for me. I just think Max is great. And the reign, just to, you know, really touch on it a bit more, was absolutely great. I think the character work Max does is great. Obviously, he was defending it more often than what we realised. You know, the Forbidden Door stuff was kind of a detour. You had the stuff with Briscoe. Obviously, you know, you had the stuff, obviously the Darby stuff and the Kenny stuff, etc., etc. That's the problem, I would say, is after Briscoe, it felt like we just got Briscoe over with, then we just done Kenny. And it was like, okay, you know what I mean? That's what we're kind of doing. But, you know, it made sense. It obviously worked for Kenny for me. I just think Max is... It's unfortunate in a way, but frankly, Max, it's like you look at All in Texas, right? All in Texas last year, you technically had 3 huge, big, I don't like saying there's 3 main events, that's stupid, but you know, you have 3 big matches in the sense of Hangman Moxley was last year, that was the main event. You had Mercedes versus Toni Storm, probably the biggest match you could have made in that women's division, and you had Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada. That's a nuts triple threat of matches. Why would you just go, oh, we just want one big match with Max and Ospreay? Like, no, again, Max is such a big star, like, everyone's knows him. Like, why not give him someone if you don't, you know, he doesn't need to be this big feud? Kenny and Ospreay, to me, has to happen. That has to happen. That's level, and it needs to, you know, we need it again. With Max, the Andrade stuff, Andrade doesn't really need that much elevating, but Jesus, the Max match feels like that's his big moments. That's the moment you build him for, and that's what's really put the work in. And the character work's great, and that would elevate that match. Like, what's a bigger match? Frankly, use your own logic. Is it Max versus Ospreay? And what's a bigger match? Kenny versus Andrade or Andrade versus Max? You know it's Andrade versus Max. So why don't do that match and still do Kenny Ospreay? There's no problem with that. Not everything. This is the problem with wrestling fans, so to speak, is they think everything requires wins and belts and everything, when reality, without that, nothing's notable. It's stupid. It's a stupid logic, and I've never understood it. It's like when saying people are buried because they got beat once. What do you want about? And, like, I think with this one's a great example. It's not, you look at the streak at WrestleMania, this is WWE example. Do you think the Undertaker needed a title every time? Do you think the Undertaker, quote-unquote, buried all the talent he was having WrestleMania matches with? No, that'd be stupid. So, like, I'm not saying Max is going to go on an all-in streak, frankly, but, you know, not everything needs a belt. Not everything matters by wins and losses. It's entertaining sport. It's not an actual metric. It's stupid, you know what I mean? Like, realistically, like, who cares? As long as you're getting good matches, who cares? Like, I just don't get why people use that, like, stupid logic. Oh, he's buried because he's being beat. Shut up. Frankly, shut up. But either way, I think Max, as an actual champion, again, for the 3 times, now, technically, you know, it is 3 times. I'm going to say technically 2. It's 3. And I think it was great. I think the Kenny stuff obviously worked very well. I really liked how, obviously, big fan of the payoff. But I just think with Max, the big question is, what do we do with All In with Max now going forwards? And Redemption, debatably, but mainly All In. I just think to me, it's Andrade. I think that's the obvious call. I think that's the obvious thing. Again, they could throw a little bit of a swerve, depending on what you do with Andrade in terms of, do you give Andrade a belt? Do you kind of go down that road? Because they did set up something with Andrade on Dynamite, obviously with Jake Doyle next week, and then obviously you could have a title shot. That could work, and then you could do Max for the national belt, but that's possible, to add a bit of gold to it, maybe, but I don't know. I just feel like Max Andrade is, like, All In, again, it's got to be your destination point for all these stories, a lot of them anyway, and Max versus Andrade is a big story, it's a big, long-lasting, like, again, like, Takeshita, Fletcher, Okada, all that stuff, that makes sense to do that there. Same with, obviously, Kenny and Ospreay. It makes sense. Maybe I just don't understand people's logic, and I just call them idiots. Maybe they are just idiots. Frankly, I'm going to go with the latter. But to actually, whittle it down to the main point of the video, I thought Max was absolutely great. I thought Max done a lot of heavy lifting. I think he carried that belt great. Obviously, it's a shame that he lost the belt, but for Kenny, who cares? It's the right call. Had to be the right call. And whatever happens from All In, again, I think it will be Andrade. I'm looking forward to it. I think Max obviously has done a great job, and he's going to get the belt again. Don't worry, he's obviously going to get the belt again. I'm looking forward to it, because the guy is money, and he is phenomenal. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Just wanted to ramble about Max's third reign, and obviously what's going to go from All In and stuff. But yeah, let me know what you thought of Max, and what you think Max is going to do for AEW All In 2026. Let me know.